What is up, everyone? Welcome back at it after a long hiatus. Welcome back to the NASCAR DFS live preview show brought to you by Daily Fan Racing. Man, it's been I've been out doing retirement stuff, right? Out on vacation, but I tell you what, it is good to be back. Finally, been a few weeks since I've been here. Can't wait. Man, what is that? Is that some feedback there? But let's kick it over.
I had the window open. I'm sorry, buddy. I had the channel open on the other page.
Yeah, ruined my intro. Way to ruin the momentum we had there. But yeah, back at it, man. It's good to be back chatting NASCAR with you. It's been a kind of a crazy day. Like world historic events, like literally just happened before we go on the air. So yeah, gotta just get back to the headspace of DFS. I am excited, man. NASCAR, it's Pocono, it's the tricky triangle. Like, tell me how your last few weeks again have been. How things been?
It's been okay. Not the best on the DFS side. I've actually been on a career worst stretch the last 2 months. So for me, and it's very minor compared to what most people deal with.
What does a career worst stretch look like to you?
I'm down $400.
Okay.
But
2 months, you said?
Yeah, but it's, when you zoom out from the past few years, I'm still up thousands of dollars. So like it's you shouldn't.
No, you're in a bad stretch. No, you're in a bad stretch.
But it's not fun when it feels like everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and that's certainly where we're at right now on my end.
Hey, man, I've been there before, right? I mean, I'm freaking retired over it. Like I couldn't stand the swing. So I'm just joking. But so I know, like, obviously, like I've been through this. Like you're going through this now, and I know a lot of listeners are obviously out there have probably been through this, right? We've all been in these downswings where it doesn't feel like it doesn't matter what we do. Like we can nail a slate and it just never going to fall away. It was like, how does everybody else always win? Like how do you like mentally like get into it? Do you to keep focusing and like sticking to like what you're doing? Like how do you approach with these situations?
I haven't had many of them, and like not to be, I don't know what the right word is for that, but I really have never experienced this. I had, I don't know, 5 years ago stretches like this, but I was not really as invested. I wasn't really doing this full time, and so since I've made this my full time job, I've never had this type of stretch. I've never had a run where it's like that. So it's definitely a challenge for me mentally. Like I was talking to my wife after the Xfinity race. I was up $200 until Shane Van Gisbergen got spun by Mayer, and then I lost $50. And it's like I don't know what I would have done differently. Like, that chain of events that brought Herbst back into it, that ruined the SVG play, that it eventually ended up hurting the Truex play and some other things. It's like if that never happens, it's a 3x, 4x day. But instead, it's a loss. And it's been a lot of that, like a ton of that. And the truck race, if Zane Smith doesn't have a right rear shock failure, doesn't get trapped lap down from having to change it, gets the free pass, at any point before the last 5 laps, he's going to finish top 10 or even top 5 and smash, and I'm going to have a huge day. Instead, I broke even. So it's just these little things keep happening. And I think at the end of the day, because I have – 3 straight years of winning. And I think you just have to keep playing the way you do and wait for it to fall back in. But also on the other side, it's like NASCAR is at its most variance level, highest variance level that we've ever seen. Like it's from track types, road courses, all different things that happen, pit strategies, no tire fall off, and all the things at the Cup side. It's really hard to kind of pin down play sometimes. And then these clowns in the Xfinity and truck series, they love to wreck sometimes, except when I need my guy to get a free pass. This was the cleanest weekend I think I've ever seen, and it's when my guys are a lot down. So, at the end of the day, I think it's really about just keeping your head down, not overreacting. And eventually,
that's key right there. I think is not overreacting, because I think that tend to be what I have done in the past, right? Like I think like you get in these slumps and you start telling yourself, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, well, sometimes you cannot be doing anything wrong. Like you have to evaluate success differently. I think like when you get in these stretch and you look back on this, it's like, am I playing the fast cars? Like, am I playing are the guys doing what I thought they were going to do? And yeah, if shit hits the fan, then shit's going to hit the fan. You can't control that, right? As long as you're picking the fast cars and the guys are scoring well, and it just you didn't catch the right break, then I think you got to just keep doing what you're doing and keep plugging away. But if you're missing the fast cars completely, like this today in Xfinity, I missed Cole Custer completely. I didn't see him coming, so that's terrible, right? If you're missing the fast car, I think that's when you can kind of maybe beat yourself up a little bit. But let's move on, right? It's okay, right? We've had it's a good time to turn it around on a unique track like Pocono, right? We haven't really had a track like Pocono so far on the season, so maybe this is a track where you're going to get things turned around, right? I know I hit a takedown at Pocono last year in the Xfinity Series, so nice. I actually do love Pocono. I think Pocono is a very straightforward racetrack to approach. So why don't you tell us about Pocono and how Pocono differs from other tracks, and maybe does it correlate with anything else on the circuit?
It really doesn't anymore. Not at least anything we've seen so far. Maybe IMS next week there'll be some correlation, and then I think it's next week. And then Michigan coming up. Michigan, where you're from, also is a correlatable track. But at the end of the day, it's still a high speed oval. So I do think you're gonna kind of look into intermediates and the guys that have been faster. No surprise, it's Hendrick and JGR up at the top, right? Like that's kind of what we expect. But it's only 160 lap race. There's not as many Dominator points. There is a strategy element that creates different leaders. It's really hard for someone to lead 100 plus laps just because strategy is going to mix the field up a little bit. It is definitely a track, at least with the Cup Series, where I think there's a pretty big discrepancy between the haves and have-nots. I think the top 10 or so are a good bit clear of that middle pack, and then the rest of the guys are just kind of falling in line. But I do feel like the top two teams have really smashed here in recent years, especially with this car. And so we are going to be able to lean heavily into those teams and those drivers. I feel like that's a good part about the slate. But as we've seen so far this weekend, strategy can shake things up. Cole Custer got the lead to start the second stage because Allgaier had the pit penalty and all that. And he only led like 20 laps the whole race, 25 laps or whatever it was. And a lot of that's just because that strategy is going to shake up. Some guys are going to pit because they can cycle back to the front, and some guys are going to stay out for stage points, whatever. There are going to be periods where our most dominant guy is mid-pack, or maybe he's 12th or something, and he's going to have to make up positions. And so it's going to spread some Dominator points around. It's going to limit upsides on guys, in the truck race, I was really kind of limiting my Heim exposure because I'm like, he has to basically do what he did, which is smash. But, he has to hit an absolute perfect race to kind of score more than Ross Chastain. And, if at any point that race goes differently, if strategy does come into play, if the cautions didn't fall perfectly for Heim, he would have pitted at some point. He would have got mid-pack, and he wouldn't have dominated all those laps led. So at some point, I do think we'll see multiple guys lead. I think we're still looking at 2 Dominator strategy. I still think we're going to want a typical 2 Dominator build, 2 stud plays, and then 2 value tier plays. I think it's a pretty clean makeup, and I don't expect any carnage. With the next gen car here, I just don't expect much in terms of crashing, but these guys are also idiots, and every time I say there's no carnage, they wreck. So
it's interesting you say that. I'm looking at last 2 next gen races here. I have my notes here. Total of 20 cautions in those races, 37 laps and 44 caution laps in those 2 races. So for whatever reason, you guys have tore up a lot of races. I don't know if cars didn't make to the end. I didn't look that far into it, but they've
last year, 30 cars finished on the lead lap. So I don't know. In my mind, I think there's going to be a lot of spinning. There's definitely guys that are going to struggle out of the tunnel turn and spin out. We saw that 3 times in practice. I think you'll have those single car incidents, but we haven't seen huge wrecks, at least in my opinion, and how I feel like it plays out. I look at some racetracks where there's just massive accidents, massive guys getting taken out. It hasn't necessarily been that. We've certainly had a couple.
I do think though, what this does. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. With multiple cautions, so even if it's multiple spinouts, there's not a lot of cars leaving this race. Is what it does affect. It does affect those Dominator points even more, right? If we're having 37, 44 laps under caution, because it's a big track, right? You know how NASCAR is like to run 4 laps under caution every time they throw the caution flag, right? So if you get 40 laps under caution, that's 40 fast laps off the table off a race that's already only 160 laps of Dominator points. So it does bring those Dominator points down even less important. And to me, that's why I like Pocono, right? Because it's all about speed, right? You got to have speed. So the cars who have speed are pretty obvious, right? It's probably JGR, HMS, right? And then those Dominator points aren't as crucial to where if you do miss the guy who scores the most points, it's not like he's going to crush your slate to where you can't like still score enough points to, make some money back, right? So it allows you to get a little different and play those scenarios where, strategy can play out and you get a guy up there who nobody else expected to lead 20, 30 laps, right? And score some points.
Yeah.
So I love Pocono for that reason.
I'm probably wrong. In my head, there's not a lot of crashing out, but you're right. There's probably going to be a lot of cautions. And that certainly can shake things up variance-wise. It definitely can give some guys opportunity to shake up their running order, through strategy and all that. So you're right. I probably shouldn't have said it's not. But at the end of the day, it still felt like the best drivers were at the front. The best teams were at the front. And we still got the result. Now, aside from, I guess, like Kyle Larson didn't finish at the front, right? And he probably should have. But Hamlin, Reddick, Truex, all those guys, the top 6 guys started in the top 11. I still felt like, for the most part, it's I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will be a high carnage race. Maybe that's why I'm not winning right now. But
hey, no, I mean, we could both be right. Okay, right? Could just be a lot of spins, or trends don't typically play out though, right? Like typically when I say like, man, this place has been, a ton of wrecks the last 2 years, that's when we're going to run clean and green. While we have everybody here, right, I do want to remind everybody, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. We do realize this is a part-time show, right? We only do half the races. We just had a long break, right? You may have forgot about us. If you subscribe to us, you won't be able to forget about us, right? We'll pop up to the top of your feed every time there's a new show out. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and leave a comment. If you have any questions, please ask away. I know Larkin is itching to answer some questions. But furthermore, so you mentioned, 2 Dominators, and I would agree with that. But I do think, that the point of Dominator points is you don't have those crushing Dominator performances like we have seen, in past weeks with the typical intermediate racetrack, right? Last 2 races here, we've had 2. This could be, an attrition of, having those 37, in 44 caution laps, but we've had 2 Dominator points north of 20 points in those 2 races, and only 3 between 10 and 13. So just not a lot of Dominator points to score, but we still, saw Dominator points. You still got to have the guys who score the most points to hit optimal, right? And that typically is the guy who scores 10 to 15 Dom points and wins. So I don't know where I'm going with that. You got anything to add to that?
This has been, we both have been struggling in this one. No, so you're right. Like, that's been the biggest thing with the next gen car in general, is a lot of these races, because the field's so tight and whoever gets out front is leading for a chunk, even if they're not the fastest car, we're seeing less of the obvious guys leading 70% of laps and just smashing. It's a lot more of spread out, laps led, but fast laps as well. And then, like, if you look at last year, Hamlin won, and no one would have been surprised that Hamlin won, but he only led 9 laps. Reddick finished second and led 15. Truex finished third and led 20. And none of those guys finished first in a stage. None of those guys were like just out front obvious plays, but all the best cars still ended up first, second, and third. Like, those to me were the 3 best cars. Maybe you can say Byron, but Byron had the pole, led a chunk, and then kind of like he did the typical Byron thing where he doesn't get to finish. And so, with these type of races, if that happens with the leader, like it almost happened with Allgaier, if he didn't get to pull that strategy, like it's happened with many other drivers, if they lead 60 laps but finish 20th, it doesn't matter. And so I think because there's a low lap count, because there was a higher caution count the last 2 years, which could limit fast lap availability, because strategy can shake up who leads and doesn't give anyone that massive upside, there is some more equity in place differential or things like that. But at the end of the day, the guy that wins and likely leads 10, 15, 20 laps is going to score enough kind of regardless who it is, most likely. So you're still wanting to hunt that race leader or winner, and it's still likely going to be from a pool of about 6 guys, unless it's something really crazy. So it's still picking a Dominator play, but you're more so trying to land on the race winner potentially.
Yeah, you are going to need to hit 2 Dominators, right? Looking back at the last 2 optimals here in the next gen races, we have had 2 drivers in both of those races starting inside the top 10, priced over 10,000, right? So guys who are going to score those Dominator points. So let's dive into it. We're about almost 15 minutes on the show. We haven't started talking about drivers yet. Let's get into it. Let's talk about some drivers. Let's start talking about those drivers that you plan on targeting for Dominators, right? we are going to have to play 2 of those in our lineup. We've talked about that. So we need to pick through this massive driver pool we have here and find 2 guys who are going to give us, the best shot scoring the Dominator's points. So looking at the top of the, let's start from the top to the bottom, right? It seems like looking at way I look at it, it seems like all the potential Dominator points is coming from the top of this price. I think DraftKings has done a pretty good job, right? I mean, I see, about all the guys priced above 9K, I think that's probably 7 of the guys I think can probably score Dominator points here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a pretty small group of guys, I think 6 or 7, that I'm really on for Dominator points in this race. Now, that's not accounting for someone leading 15 laps randomly through strategy, right? Someone just running extremely long or what have you. But for the most part, I think there's 6 or 7 guys, and they are who you think they are. It's Hamlin, it's Truex, it's Byron, it's Gibbs, who's starting on pole, Reddick, and then you got Larson and Bell, who at least offer place differential points. So their totals can be kind of aided by those points if they are able to get a top 3 finish. But, it's really that group. And that's been the case for most races this year, especially on ovals. And I have the guys I like. I'm certainly leaning towards, Truex and Hamlin being the top 2 picks for me. But, like we've seen with Custer in the Xfinity race or even in any other race this year, it only takes one of these guys to kind of sneak out there at 20% ownership, lead 50 laps, and be optimal. And so while I might not be as high on Byron, I might not be as high on Gibbs or someone else for their upside, all they need to do is just kind of lead and finish in the top 5, and they could also deliver. So I think there's a good group. I think mixing and matching makes some sense. I think Truex is going to be really tough. I think he's going to be really, really tough in this race. Definitely my favorite for the win. But the cards are so close. If he has a bad pit stop or bad strategy, he's not going to lead, and he's not going to reach the value needed. So
I do want to provide a little bit of insight here. I mentioned, right, we had 5 Dominator points in the 2 next gen races, 5 Dominator performances in the 2 next gen races here at Pocono of over 10 Dominator points. 4 of those performances came from guys starting on the front row. So tell me why Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex are going to be those guys this week, starting 3rd and 4th, not on the front row.
Because they're just the best 2 cars, and they've been the best 2 guys here. I mean, Hamlin's won 7 times. He won here last year. Truex was one of those guys. He started 2nd here last year and led 20 laps. I just feel like those are the 2 best guys. I mean, Truex had the best lap times in practice. He looks unbelievable. And Hamlin this is his track. He's the best ever at Pocono, in my opinion. So I feel really, really strong about them. But it's also juxtaposed next to Ty Gibbs not having the experience and having shown that he can deliver those Dominator performance. He's on the pole. So that helps me in that aspect where I'm like, I'm not super confident that you're going to deliver. And then Byron did it last year. He led 60 laps, but he's very up and down. Like some races he'll be up there all day, and then some races you're looking at is like, why is William Byron 13th? I don't get it. And so I think because those are the 2 on the front row, and then I got Hamlin and Truex I'm so confident in, that I do lean towards those 2. But yeah, I mean, whoever gets the lead on the race start has a very good chance to go out there and lead the first stage or the first chunk of the race.
Those 2 guys, right, starting in the front row. And I'm just playing, this is fun banter back and forth with Gibbs and Byron, right? Both, starting 1st and 2nd. The last intermediate track we were at, Charlotte, those 2 guys, Byron led 49 laps and Gibbs won 74, right? And I think you loved Gibbs in that race, right? I feel like I know there's a lot more laps in that race, but I feel like in a track where we have a lot less laps, right? 9K, it's much easier for Ty Gibbs to pay off that salary at 9K, with the limited laps here, knowing where he's starting on the pole and the advantage that gives him here.
Yeah, Gibbs is definitely not a bad play at all. I don't mind it. He only had 8 fast laps in that race, and that really goes to show that having the lead it's hard to pass the leader.
It's extremely hard here to pass the leader, right?
Yeah, and so that's definitely an advantage, and I definitely want to give him the credit for that. But the issue I would say is you're not clicking off laps fast here, right? And if we do get those spins and we do start shaking things up a little bit, I just feel like Truex and Hamlin are going to be better in the long run for starters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't mind Gibbs at 9K. I don't mind that play at all. It's definitely going to be safer to play those place differential plays, I feel like, in this particular slate. But if Gibbs goes out there and leads the whole first stage, he could be a fine play. He led 74 laps at Charlotte and only scored 55 points, though. Like, that's pretty indicative of the concern I have, is if he only leads 20 laps and finishes sixth, he's going to end up scoring 35, 40 points, whatever it is. And that probably isn't enough at the price.
Yeah, I think he needs to finish like top 5 and score 10 Dominator points, right? I think to really, to have a great day. So, yeah, it's thin value there, obviously. And probably, starting on the poll, you're probably going to definitely draw some ownership. One guy I know we haven't really mentioned yet. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned your boy Red Dog. He looks to be really fast in practice, right? And he's been finished second here last 2 times here. Fast laps, right? We like Reddick at all? You think he can be a sleeper here for some Dominator points that he can get to the front?
Yeah, I love Reddick here. I always really like, you're in my league, and there's a lot of people in my league. I played him. I think it was at Nashville from a similar spot. Basically, he's starting 7th. He offers a few place differential points. He's a little bit more expensive right now than I would like out of this play. He was 8,800 at Nashville, so he went up 1,000. But essentially, it's a guy that I feel like can finish top 3. I think he's a top 3 car from what I can tell, and what my expectation is. You got the track history of back-to-back second-place finishes. I do think he can click off fast laps. I do think he can lead at some point in this race. And so that upside is very, very intriguing. Now, what I don't like is the price. And, at Nashville, 8,800, I could stomach him only scoring 45 points, right? I can stomach him just kind of like what we're talking about with Gibbs. It's like, if I'm not affecting the rest of my lineup to play him, it's fine. But if Reddick finishes 4th and only scores 42, 43 points, be it Truex and Hamlin are better or whatever the scenario is, then I'm probably hurting the bottom end of my lineup with Reddick. And that would be my only concern. So he has gone from a good stud tournament play that I would mix in with 2 Dominators to he has to be a Dominator himself. And so I do love the play. He, like I said, he's in top 3 for me on this slate. I love it. But he's more of a pick between Hamlin, Truex, like you are literally just putting him into that blender of Dominator plays, and he has to come through. So I do like it. He's a great option. I think Truex is my favorite going in, and Reddick's probably my number 2. And then Hamlin's always Hamlin and always a contender. So I love the upside of Reddick, but I'm a lot more cautious than I have been because they've shot his price back up.
Yeah, I agree. I think Reddick's, high upside, high risk type of play. Thin value there again. He's just like Gibbs, got to probably finish top 5 and score, around 10 Dominator points, to really deliver home that value and compete with those. Well, you also need guys like Hamlin and stuff to underperform. So you like Larson and Bell as, those PD plays. Are those the PD plays you're talking about over Gibbs, or the guys underneath probably that you're talking about?
The guys underneath, I think when you look at, Elliott a little bit more in price, but Elliott falls into that. Keselowski, Chastain.
Does Elliott have the potential to score as well as Larson and Bell as what here?
Yeah, I think the thing with Elliott is, you're hoping he finishes top 5, obviously, and then with some fast laps, and you're hoping he's getting to 50 points because I think most of the time in my lineup building, I'm looking for guys in this range that are going to get to 50 points. And especially on a race like this, where I think only one guy is really going to have the opportunity to truly separate themselves in Dominator points. So I like playing some chase, but I also am not like super confident that he's going to finish top 5. So it's more of a contrarian play to an extent, but it works. I think Keselowski and Chastain are the true pivots off of Gibbs for me. Keselowski's been fantastic on the intermediates. I think it's pretty fair to expect him to run top 10 or to contend for a top 10 finish. And then Ross Chastain is self-explanatory. 8,400, 19th, top 10 upside. He's finished, I put it in my breakdown when I was writing it down. I wish I could say it, but he's basically finished like 12th or better or 13th or better in 7 straight races or something this year, outside of the Nashville race where he led a chunk and got a bad finish, but was running at the very front. And then, of course, the Chicago road course. So Chastain has been super consistent. He's been really, really good. And then his upside is a top 10 finish, which will score well for the price. So I think Chastain's the preferred like place differential mid-tier stud play that you're trying to get 50 points out of if you're not comfortable with going, with the Gibbs play.
Yeah, I think the thing you think about when you think about Pocono, you think about those big fanning out 4 and 5 wide on the restarts, right? That is like
He's the best restarter in the series.
That's prime Ross Shane territory, but that's also prime Ross Chastain territory to just probably put it in the wall, right? We've seen him do that here at Pocono 2 years ago, right? Racing Kyle Larson, but he was racing for the win, right? And obviously he's had some hiccups on those intermediates as well this week, so you always got to worry about Chastain putting it in the wall, but he definitely will race hard and has top 5 upside, right? Can really break the slate open for 8,400. So going to have a lot of shares of them. How about moving on down? I know Kyle Busch, and are we like how far away are we still not touching him yet? I mean, how we doing with Kyle Busch here? Starting 24 seems like a guy who has potential for PD. He's got to finish probably top 13 to pay off his salary here, right? Like intermediates are where RCR has been good. You think he can turn it around this week?
I don't know. It's really tough. Like I put it, in my write-up where I'm like, I just don't know what to say with him anymore. He's only had one finish better than 27th on intermediates since Stenhouse punched him in the face. And that was a 15th at the Coke 600. This dude has not been good at any point this year.
But he's had 3 straight finishes inside top 15 on intermediate, so 15th, 8th, and 9th. So intermediates.
Nashville's an intermediate, so he was 27th at Nashville. Nashville's an intermediate. I don't think it's.
But he was run. But wasn't he like up inside the top 8 there before he got wrecked out? Like
he was okay.
He was there, right? At Nashville, he was continuing like top 3, right? Then he got wrecked out.
Yeah,
running third.
You're right that the speed has been much better on intermediates. It's definitely been their one good aspect. You talked about Reddick finishing second here in the RCR car in 2022. They've had speed here. They've had speed.
I feel like if everybody feels like starting 24th for 8,200, I think this is the time to lean into him. If everybody like this, I've been waiting for Kyle Busch to get to an intermediate because everybody's like,
That's what we said last year here, though. And he started 25th and finished 21st.
Yeah,
that's the concern. It's no longer a situation where Kyle Busch is the best talented, most talented guy. And he's just going to make it happen. He doesn't have the best car anymore, and he's showing flaws. And so, yes, from 24th, I'm very interested. Very interested.
Yeah, 24th. I think the upside here, if he's starting 12th, is a different story, right? I think because he doesn't have to have a great day. 13th is all he's got to do to get value, right? And if he lands inside 8th or 7th, you're going to have him.
Yeah, so it's definitely a fine play, and that's literally what I said. I was like, listen, if he finds the top 10, it's a great play, but you have to be cautious of a guy that's consistently putting himself in bad positions. The speed's not quite there. I mean, regardless in practice, it's not showing up as much. It's not happening as much. You're really playing a guy based off of what he did in JGR equipment, which doesn't equate right now, and RCR is definitely falling behind. So I think realistically, it's a top 15 car. And he can make it a top 10 finish if everything goes well. But if it doesn't go well, it can easily become a 21st place finish, and that would be bad. So I don't mind the play at all. I think it's a good secondary target, though. I definitely think Gibbs and Chastain are the preferred plays. And I also think Buescher and, Keselowski's more expensive, but Buescher and Keselowski look like they have decent speed, which they've had on all the intermediates. So I think both those guys have the ability to finish like 7th on merit. And I'm maybe a little bit more interested in those guys because the pure speed in their car is actually there.
The last log I'll throw on the Kyle Busch fire is Austin Dillon even has 2 top 16s on intermediates in an RCR car, and he's been dog shit.
Austin Dillon is great.
I'm just saying. So I mean, they've shown the speed on intermediates.
But intermediates have also been the most chaotic too. Like just
true. That's true.
We see a lot of things. I think it's a great play. Anyone that's starting in the mid-20s, I'm super interested in because just the right things breaking their way. When you look at last year, Stenhouse 22nd finished 7th, Harrison Burton started 26th, finished 8th, Eric Jones 24th, finished 9th. That's kind of self-explanatory. I love any of those guys in that range. It's just you need that scenario to play out. And so if it falls to him, it could be a fantastic play. And you're right. Their speed's been good enough that I think he's a more likely candidate to hit than like Briscoe or Gregson or that group.
Yeah.
But it's also like, man, how much? So like it's a fine play. It's a good play. But
to your point about
so bad.
loading up about guys starting, 20th on back, right? If you're looking at those optimals, I mentioned about the optimals in the last two races here, right? I said, we had two guys starting inside the top 10 in both those races, right? We also had, of the 8 remaining guys in those optimals, 7 started 22nd or worse, right? So you're gonna have to load up on those guys starting 20th on back. So
yeah, and that's really the dichotomy of this particular slate, because the best cars are at the front. And that was the top 10 cars are kind of clear. Like, you can tell it's the Toyotas JGR in 2311 versus HMS. Like, you can just tell what it is. Then you kind of got like the RFKs and, a couple, obviously Blaney and Logano are up there because their Penske's always pretty decent. But then everyone's just kind of in this weird blob behind them. And depending on how the strategy plays out, depending on track position, like track position is so important here. A guy like, I'll throw Todd Gilliland out because he's finished like 17th for 3 months now. If he gets inside the top 15, he's just going to run inside the top 15. The speed difference from him to anyone else in that range is non-existent. There is no difference. They're all the same. And so it's really about track position at that point. So when you get these guys that hit the right strategy call, that are able to gain that track position, they're kind of just going to hang in that range. And so that's what we saw last year. I mean, Harrison Burton finished top 10. That's self-explanatory. But, that's kind of what you're hoping for. And there are going to be drivers that hit like that. Now, in my hope, with my ownership, I'm hoping it's going to be Bubba Wallace. And, and that's where a lot of ownership is going to be anyways. But you got some obvious plays like Bubba Wallace. I think Stenhouse and Gillen are going to fall in that. And, of course, Justin Haley, because he's so cheap and he's been so good the last couple of months. Those are kind of the chalk place differential plays. But that group of like Jones, Briscoe, Gregson that offer place differential are going to go low owned. They're actually really good pivot plays for that. Now, they're not going to project well. Odds are they're going to run 22nd. But if they gain the track position through whatever means possible, they can deliver. And it's no longer about like, hey, you have the 22nd best car, you're just going to run 22nd. You can take a 22nd place car, get the track position, and just stay up there. So I think that's probably where the slate is won. Not necessarily, you need the guy that wins or you need the big dominator, but the slate's probably won on whoever randomly hits, whatever this guy is. And again, Harrison Burton was that guy last year, and it can still be him again this year. It could be, Cindric, or like there's a large group of these guys that are low in salary that are qualifying where they are because they are the 20th best driver in the series. And if they're able to hit the race right, they can do really, really well. So Busch is just a greater version of that for me right now. It's like, obviously he's a better driver than any of those guys I just mentioned, but he also costs more, and it's been a very bad, the confidence level's bad, the mojo's bad. So it's a little risky, but I think, we don't really have to go person by person to break them down, but that whole group that we kind of just talked about with Gregson, Busch, Briscoe, Jones, McDowell, Cindric, all those guys, Allmendinger could fall into that too, that aren't the chalk plays, that aren't Stenhouse, that aren't Gillen, that aren't the ones that are going to be heavily invested, Bubba Wallace. Any of those guys can hit. And if they do, you're going to get a guy at probably 10% ownership and really, take home the big money. Like, that's going to be the key. So that's the part that I don't like about Pocono. You say you love it. I think that's the unpredictable nature of this track that makes it really hard to be perfect, to win big here. And so that's where it's going to be tricky.
We said a lot of names there. I know there's a lot of upside there. Let's play a little game to let's do a little rapid fire here to kind of see where we stand on some of these guys here, right? So we agree you like probably Bubba Wallace is the best. Well, okay, well no, I want to assume you like Bubba or Ross better.
Bubba.
Okay, so you like Bubba the best, right? So of the guys below him, that Gregson, Briscoe, Jones, let's just leave it to those 3 guys, right? Who do you like best in that group?
Do that again for me. I'm sorry.
Gregson, Briscoe, Jones. Who you like better in those 3?
That's a very tough group, because I think in my head I like Briscoe because of where he starts.
That's who I would say. I like Briscoe.
Yeah, but Eric Jones finished top 10 here last year. And so, and part of it, I'm just like, is there something a little bit more with Jones? I really like Jones as a driver,
Eric
but
Jones
I think
Briscoe's
Briscoe's got the bigger upside. Sorry, I think Briscoe's got the bigger upside. Gregson's a great play too. The whole thing with this group, though, is they're too expensive to not be top 13 finishers. Like, if they finish 17th, it doesn't really matter. They're going to hurt you in other areas because you're paying up over $7K for them. Whereas if you're able to get, you have to be perfect with them. They have to hit to work. And that's why they're like secondary options. You're just not going to be on them very heavily. But I think Briscoe's the preferred play because he just has more place differential. He's easier to pay off. He's easier to work with. And his floor is not as bad. Gregson, like I've seen glimpses. I mean, hell, he was 10th at Nashville. We've seen that upside from him. But we've also seen like 38th at Charlotte. We've seen these bad finishes. We've seen these bad performances. I think Gregson's probably got the most speed, although this team looks like crap. By the way, if you look at practice speed and qualifying, Stuart Haas did not look good, aside for Josh Berry. So maybe they can give that information to the 10. I think Briscoe's better option, but Gregson's fine too. He has some really good performances. He's looked good at times. And at the end of the day, it's just track position. Whoever gets it can have a good day.
Okay. Would you rather be in that range of Gregson, Briscoe, Jones, or on Ross Chastain?
Ross.
Okay. Would you rather be on that range of Gregson, Briscoe, or Jones, or Kyle Busch?
I might want to be on Gregson and Briscoe over Busch, just for ownership leverage, just for.
You think they come in lower owned than Kyle Busch?
I don't know at this point. I would think so, but maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, we've seen some really low numbers on SHR drivers this year in ownership. Sometimes it comes in hot, but sometimes it's like, wow, why is Briscoe only 7%? What? Like I've seen that numerous times this year. So
Bubba's soaking up all the ownership there. Right?
Yeah, Bubba's definitely soaking up the ownership, and for good reason. I mean, that's a top 10 car, no question. So as long as Bubba has a standard race, he should finish top 10 or 12 and smash. So, now it's Bubba Wallace, so that's no guarantee. But I think I'd probably be on Gregson. Now they're all fine. I think I'd probably be on Gregson, Briscoe slightly over Busch, but I'm going to mix them all in probably at the same amount, if I'm being honest. Like if I were to have 150 lineups, I'd have like 15% on all three of them.
That's probably a smart play, right? Because you don't know who's going to get you want to, just land on whoever it is, the guy that actually, plays the strategy out. Who knows how.
And if you got to lean one way or another, it doesn't hurt to be like, screw it, I'm going Gregson. That's my guy.
Right. So. All right. Well, let's dip down our toes a little bit further down into a little bit, below 7K now. I know you've mentioned Todd Gilliland. Like we all probably love Todd Gilly. I don't know if we need to talk too much. Just got to finish, 20th or better to pay off this salary, starting 33rd. Fish 17th, 14th, last two intermediates. Like anything. I mean, guy's been running the lights out. Got to think he's got the upside. Got to play him, right?
Yeah, his last 9 races I think have been top 17 finishes. He's a great play. The concern I have is what if he just finishes 23rd, which is probably what his cars really got speed wise in it. So, 23rd is going to be a solid 29 points. That's not getting it done at 6.8K. If he was 5.8K like he used to be, that's a different story. Mm-hmm. But at Charlotte, he jumped up to 6,500. He's kind of been in this range since then. Charlotte, he started 35th and finished 17th. But
he's been delivering at this salary, right? Even no matter where he starts,
delivering.
No matter where he starts at, he delivers.
It's a great play. It's just there's going to be lineup constructions where if you pay up for him, you're hurting something else, and that's where it's like you may not be able to play Reddick. You're going to have to pay down the Gibbs, or you're going to have to pay down the Chastain to be able to afford Gilliland, which is fine. Like in cash, I don't mind that. Like if you're like, okay, I really want to play Reddick for tournaments, but I'm going to play. Chastain and Gilliland in cash because I think they're good places for plays. I think they're a little bit safer, what have you. That makes sense. I think Gilliland's upside is great in all formats. He makes a lot of sense. He hasn't scored less than 30 points or 33 points since the Coke 600. Like he's delivered at every track type. Really, he hasn't scored less than 30 all the way back to April. Like he's been a great play regardless of where he started, whether it's 15th or 30th. So, I'm a big fan of Todd. I think he's got a decent amount of talent, and he's definitely just been solid. No mistakes, no crashes, not getting in any other nonsense. When it rains, he's fine in the wet conditions. When it's not raining and it's about strategy, they get it done. I think Gilliland's doing what McDowell probably should have done is take the finishes that you can get, stop wrecking your stuff, and Todd obviously from DFS perspective is delivering for us. So I definitely like him. I definitely think it's an obvious play. My one concern is like, hey, what if he just finishes where he probably should, which is 24th?
Yeah, I think Todd. I think Todd. He definitely, probably soaks up a lot of ownership here in this range, which means that that leaves us for, no guy better to play as a pivot than Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's starting 31st. So like
Oh,
he's got
Stenhouse is the chalk, baby. He ain't the pivot.
It's what he's the chalk. You think at 60?
He's
You
the
think the chalk's Todd Gilliland? Really?
Yeah,
I
he's
would
the
think
chalk.
for
I think
sure.
they're both pretty heavily owned, but Stenhouse is the chalk.
Why?
So I don't actually follow him, but sometimes his stuff pops up. Rotodoc, Nick Giffen, I think. I don't know. Anyways, he tweeted it out earlier this week where it's like Stenhouse has finished top 20 here in every race but the one he blew a motor. So like 5 of 6 races with JTG. He's had top 20 speed in every single one of those races. And quite frankly, he's had top 15 speed in almost all of those races. You're talking about a guy just speed-wise at Pocono with this team, including with the next-gen car. He's been a top 20, top 15 guy. It's a lot easier to see his speed being legit and him delivering on it based off of multiple years of history. Like, this is 100% up his alley. So, yeah, I think just the recent results at the track, the overall speed that Stenhouse shows on the intermediates in general is important. And I also think there's a Chevy dynamic that I kind of like here over the Fords. But I think the salary is going to kind of shift a little bit more. You're just going to build lineups where it's a little bit harder to play Gillen, and you're just like, screw it, I'll play Ricky. And then there's also going to be your normal amount of ownership where you're just going to be on Ricky. I think Ricky's going to be 25, 30% owned. Wow. I think he's going to be heavily owned for this price range, and for good reason, because he's probably going to deliver.
I mean, I don't know where he started at in the races he's had. I know the last 2 that I'm looking at, he started 21st and 19th, so he definitely qualified a lot better than where he did 31st. What's his speed look like off? Because I guess he's got fast. He's got speed in practice too, don't he? A little bit.
Yeah.
Don't he?
So his worst finish is 18th. Aside from the engine issue, worst finish is 18th. He was 7th here last year. A couple 15th place finishes, even dating back to when he was at Roush. It's like 14th, 16th, 11th, 18th, like 15th. Like, it was just a stretch where he's top 18. It's been pretty consistent. Ricky Stenhouse is a top 18 guy here.
Well, now Chalk Ricky scares the shit out of me.
And that's the key is you're talking about a guy who, if he just hits his average finish here of 17th, he's going to score 43 points, right? And you're like, damn, that's a great score. But if he's 30% owned and he wrecks, that's an issue. Or it could be, a blessing if you're going underweight on him. I mean, there's definitely a concern with Ricky Stenhouse as always, but he also isn't wrecking as much this year. I don't know if you've noticed that.
He's never started this bad, though. He's never started. Like, I'm looking at all of his Pocono starts. He's never started this bad. I mean, it doesn't mean anything that he's a track that you need speed. He's always been good here. He's always qualified inside the top 20. And this week he shows up
he was 22nd last year and finished 7th.
22nd. This is his starting positions over the last 10. 22nd, 19th, 6th, 7th, 4th, 14th, 14th, 18th, 17th. Right? I mean, yeah, he's shown speed in qualifying. I'm not saying
can I do the
slow truck. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I know you are.
Right?
I know you are. This is what makes the show fun.
Giving us reason to fade Chalk Ricky here. I'm trying to justify a fade on Ricky on Chalk Ricky here.
So I'm going to go back to the Roush Fenway races here. And yes, this is multiple years ago, but 23rd, 21st, 23rd, 14th, 25th. He finished 18th or better in all those races. 11th place, a 14th place, a 15th place. So that stretch, he didn't need to qualify good. I don't like qualifying here is so tricky because if you mess up one corner, your lap's done. Right. And that's what we saw with Gillen.
Back to that stretch, he finished 41st, 42nd, 34th, and 26th. And I mean, come on, like you can't cherry pick the starts and not the finishes.
I don't. Is he wrecked twice? Like, I don't give a shit that he wrecked twice. He's finished fucking 18th or better in 10 of the last 14 races. It's a 75% probability. And then if you take the last 6 races, it's even higher. What are we talking about?
Just so you know, I was so prepared to come in and talk up Ricky because I thought he was the pivot. So, like, now I got to play the other side of it. So
he's not a pivot. He's an obvious play. Now, he may wreck.
I'm just looking
100% wreck.
I'm just thinking it's
Ricky. He's a great play.
Everybody would want to play Todd because he's been clearly faster than Ricky Stenhouse over, the season, the course of the season for 300 more. That's what I would say, but whatever. Let's go on down Allmendinger. we got some more PD guys here. Ricky Stenhouse is not the end all be all, right? We do need pivots, I guess, off of Chalk Ricky now. So let's say, do we like Dinger, Haley, Priest? Any of these guys can bring the kind of upside that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. can bring us tomorrow.
Well, it still gets chalky in this range. Justin Haley's going to see a ton of ownership too. That's the issue with this whole range is like Gill and Stenhouse.
So are people playing both of them guys together, you think?
I think there's going to be a lot of lineups with two of those three. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot. Justin Haley, again, aside from New Hampshire, which he was running like fucking 10th until the last couple laps, 16th, 13th, 13th, and a 9th place finish of a 9th place at I think that's Darlington. Like he's been a top 15 guy for the last 2 months in terms of finishing, not speed wise, in terms of finishing. He's staying out of trouble. He's getting track position. He's getting good finishes. Because of where he starts, he just needs a top 20. Top 20 gets him 40 points, right? So because of that, it's a good play. But the speed in practice was bad. The speed in qualifying was bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's concerning, but it's also been about the 7th time that's been the case. He started 33rd at Nashville, finished 13th. Started, other races where it's like 28th at, I think that's Darlington, and finished 9th. Like 35th at Kansas, finished 18th. I'm not too worried about the starting position. I'm not too worried about the quote-unquote speed in practice. I feel like they kind of go to the track knowing, hey, we can't wreck this car in practice, so just get through it, turn some laps, make sure the car is good. Don't worry about qualifying. When we're in the race, we're going to make up positions. It's a long show, and we're going to get up there. And he's done that every race this year, it feels like. So yeah. I think the deal with Haley is that they're just not wrecking the car in practice. They're just not taking chances. But in the race, the speed's comparable to everyone else in the race inside the top 20. And when he's getting up there, he's maintaining that track position. So I think he's a great play. I think he's an obvious play. I think he's going to see a bunch of ownership as well. The only thing that may keep Stenhouse's ownership down or Gillen's ownership down or Haley's ownership down is the existence of the other drivers in that range, right? You can save some salary by playing Haley over Gillen and Stenhouse and whatnot. But I think those are also three guys that could definitely just run 25th and not reach value. And so that's my biggest concern with them. But in terms of what they can offer upside-wise, they're the three best plays in this range.
Yeah. Does it not? I mean, does it concern you maybe that Haley though and Rick and that team might not have the speed on, like for Pocono, right? We know we need speed, right? We need top tier speed. They haven't, a lot of his great runs have been on, road courses, shorter tracks, flatter tracks, right? I mean, I'm looking at, his intermediates here this year, right? He's only got one finish inside the top 20, on like between Charlotte, Kansas, Texas, Vegas, the trucks that I think, when I think intermediates, right? Bank tracks, speed.
Well, I mean, 18th at Kansas isn't great, but that's all you need out of this play.
Right. But I'm saying if he has to finish like 21st, right, to probably hit value, and if 3 of the 4 he hasn't done that, like that to me is a little concerning.
Well, so 13th at Nashville. Nashville's intermediate, so 13th. Yeah. 9th at Darlington.
Kind of,
though. At
like
those are our last 3.
There's a lot of on the brakes on Nashville. I don't think you think speed at Nashville, right? Speed is Nashville isn't a trade. You mean more turning, right?
All your intermediate teams deliver there. Reddick, intermediate stud, delivers there. Hamlin, Truex, HMS guys. There's a clear separation there, just like we see on all the
deliver everywhere.
So I don't care how the track runs. This was like the argument we had with the guy that worked at Stewart Haas that's up Matt McCall's ass. No offense, Matt McCall, I still hate you. Where he's like, Michigan doesn't compare to California. It's like, why the fuck not? The results are the same. The guys that run good at California run good at Michigan. That's all I care about. Same thing with Nashville. The guys that run good at intermediates run good there. And it's that simple. So Nashville is an intermediate in my book. He was really solid there. When you look at the other ones, same thing. You can say, well, they break more or the setup's different or anything else you want to say. But I'm talking about the guys that run good. The finishing equivalent to the different tracks is the same. And he's finished 18th or better in 3 straight. And, if he does finish 23rd, it's 30 points at 6,200. Like, that's not awful. That's close. It's at 4.5x. Like, that's not horrible. And I think it's more than likely he's going to finish top 20 based off of everything we see. Now, if he runs 20th, okay. But when you look at even the bad performances, and that's really early in the year with a new team that's figuring a lot out, I mean, it's still 24th at Texas and 23rd at Darlington or Dover. Like, that's not awful. So yeah. And I know you're just playing devil's advocate and I'm just going back and forth, but yeah, I mean, I just
it wouldn't be as fun if I was just like, yeah, Haley's a good play. Let's move on.
Yeah, it'd be a very boring show. But the flip side of that is Allmendinger, Cindric, Priest, really good pivots. Really good option. You know, Priest starting 36, screwed up his qualifying lap. Dude needs like 22nd to reach value, or 24th maybe even. And then if he cracks the top 20, it's a smash play, right? Like that's an amazing play. Allmendinger, same thing. Like collar cars are maybe the worst in the field, but when you look at that, if he's able to finish top 20, if he can outscore Stenhouse or Priest, same thing. And so, you know, I think there are some good pivots, some good secondary options that you can use in this range. But those three guys are the most obvious. Now,
you like anybody below that?
Well, I like LaJoy. I think LaJoy is the best pure punt. But
I do like LaJoy too for some reason. Like I can't.
I don't want to play it. I don't want anything to do with him.
I just feel like he's been so much faster than his finishes show. Like I don't have anything to look at to prove that. I'm just like, man, I feel like he's been running better than these finishes. But yeah,
I mean, even when you look at like it's like he wrecks a lot. Like right now, I don't understand it, but 20th at Nashville, 23rd at New Hampshire. You know, those type of finishes, 16th at Darlington. Like I know what the upside is, and that's probably like a top 20. And if
we've gotten too cheap now, right? It's gotten too cheap now.
Yeah, 5,600. You don't even need that, dude. Just give me 25 or 30 points so I can afford the guys I want to play. So yeah, I mean, LaJoy's the best play. Nemechek's not bad from 32nd. You know, I think that's another guy that can finish like 22nd or 20th, and you know, 5,700's a good price point. Not touching Zane Smith, but you know, Harrison Burton starts 22nd. We talked about it last year. He finished top 10, and it could be any random nonsense like that. I'm not playing Cody Ware. I'm not playing JJ Yeley, but you know, a guy like Burton, a Hemrick, an Allmendinger can definitely pull strategy. And Austin Dillon, you know, you talked about his intermediate finishes. Like he's actually had good finishes. He can finish 13th, and maybe that 34 points from him is better than anything you get from these other guys in this range. You know, when I do my projections, you know, it's really hard because I don't want to project anyone to finish 28th or 30th because I don't think it's super likely that like Corey LaJoy is going to finish 30th, but someone has to. Like someone has to actually finish in those positions. And so like when I think speed-wise, I'm like, Hemrick's just going to finish there. But then you see his other results where he's not. You see Harrison Burton where he's getting these random finishes. You know, we're talking about 12th and 9th, the last two races for Daniel Hemrick. After starting 35th and 37th.
Yeah.
I can never predict that. And you look back, Coke 600, 18th. There's just races where these guys are coming through. I think Hemrick was top 10 at Dover too, right?
So, yeah, he's proved for 5,400 at starting 27th. You got to play him. You got to play some of them. I mean,
that's really the issue with a lot of this range is you can love Haley, you can love Gillen, you can love Stenhouse like I do, and then you can end up on LaJoy and Nemechek because they feel like the right choices, but all of these guys have options or the ability to deliver. So there's really, you got to cast a wide net with the next gen car in these lower ranges. And that's where the big money's won is sometimes it's Daniel Hemrick finishing top 10 and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I played him.
Yeah. Yeah. When you want to show everybody like, look how smart I am. I was one of only 3% of people who played Daniel Hemrick. All right, let's wrap a big bow on this, man. I think we got through that pretty good. I think we talked about, all the solid plays there, but let's, iron home who we actually like, who are the plays we can build around for the slate today. Give us our core 4 plays, the plays that are going to make our slate.
So who are some good cash plays? We'll go ahead and hit that with the core 4. For me, I'm starting my lineups with Martin Truex. I'm pretty confident in his speed. I really like what I've seen all week, and I just think he's the favorite to win. So I'm going to put him in my core. Definitely playing him. I think you kind of have to play Justin Haley at 6,200. I just think for cash, the finishes he's delivered, the ownership he's probably going to see, things like that. I think Justin Haley is going to be in my core as well. Bubba Wallace starting 29th with what should be a top 10 contending car is definitely in there as well. And then because I'm too afraid to not play him at Pocono, Denny Hamlin is also in my core. So those two, Hamlin and Truex, are the guys that I think are going to run up front the whole race. Now, strategy can screw that up, and that's why I'm going to maybe go elsewhere in tournaments. But those are my top 4 guys. I definitely think in cash you can pay down from Hamlin if you want. Like, that's perfectly fine. You can go Larson or Bell, which maybe is a little bit safer. You can definitely do that. Or you can just really pay down, play someone like Chastain, and then at some point, though, you're going to want to play like a Reddick or something. So it's, really paying down from Hamlin to like a Chastain doesn't make a ton of sense unless you're just going full place differential, which I don't feel great about.
Yeah, you can play. You can play Hamlin and Truex together pretty easily with the value that's on this slate. So yeah, I like that's a nice little core. But you would play both those guys together, right? You have no issues with that, right?
No, I think they both have the ability to get like 25 fast laps and finish 1-2 and score really well. Now, if we get a high caution rate and they get trapped in traffic, yes, maybe that drops that number. But from what I can tell, Truex is going to be a 10th or 2 better than everyone on the long runs. Like I just feel like he's going to be strong.
Truex is the man. I think
until William Byron goes and kicks their ass.
Is that foreshadowing of who the winner is? Fine, stick around, guys. We'll find out in about 5 minutes. Let's get through the poor 4. Who are 4 guys that we are not playing, or you are going to be under the field on? Maybe some chalk that you might not like a Ricky Stenhouse, maybe.
No, Blaney and Logano don't really interest me. I can't justify the prices for the upside. Like, I don't know. I don't see a scenario where they're leading a lot of laps or finishing top 5, even at a mediocre rate. Like, it feels very unlikely for that to happen. So I'm just not really interested in those guys. I don't want to sacrifice the salary on them. If you're trying to be super contrarian, that's fine, but I'm not really in on those guys. Another driver, which I'm probably not going to be as much in on, that maybe the field is going to be, and this one's a little risky for me, but AJ Allmendinger. I can see this play backfiring on me. Like, I can see him finishing well. He finished 11th at Nashville, but he was not good in that race. And so at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, like, I feel like Speedwise Kaulig might be the worst team in the series right now. So Speedwise, I think Allmendinger could struggle, but if things break their way, he can do well. So that's a risky one. Now, I don't know how much ownership he sees because Haley and Stenhouse are probably going to dwarf him, but I still think AJ probably sees a decent amount, like 15%, maybe 12 to 15%. And if I can have him miss at 12 to 15% and get on some better plays, I like that. And then I'm probably going to be really underweight on Kyle Larson. And this is the one that scares me to death because it's Kyle Larson. But I am leaning into the fact that I think JGR is better. So Hamlin, Truex, Reddick, 2311, JGR spinoff. But I think those 3 are the best. I think Byron's difficult to deal with. I think Bell could be really strong as well. I think Larson's kind of the same situation we're talking about, I think, at Nashville, where it's like he's going to run up front. Like, Kyle Larson's going to run up front, but is he going to pay off the $10,800 price tag? Is he going to lead laps? Is he going to be dominant? And you look at Nashville, finished 8th, 16 fast laps. He was good, scored 40 points. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for here as well, is that he is good. He's going to be good, but he doesn't reach value. He isn't optimal, and that I can just be low on that type of play that misses.
Yeah, I will say that is definitely a risky one, right? It's Kyle Larson. He has been the man on intermediates, right? 2 wins, right, on intermediates this year. Obviously, I think, but like you said, he needs to get top 3 and score, around 10 to 15 Dominator points to really pay off that price tag. Yeah, definitely going out on there. I like it. All right, let's get to your 4 more. I forgot what it was there, man. This is my shtick, and I forgot about it. 4 more. Let's get me 4 guys who we are as potential, pivot plays, maybe some leverage spots. 4 more plays here.
So Reddick is the direct pivot off of Hamlin and Truex. That one's pretty straightforward for us. I want to put Chastain in this group, but I don't know if that's too popular of a play to do that. So I'm going to say Keselowski. I think Brad's under 9K, kind of can do the same thing. Obviously, was great at Charlotte, was great every intermediate since like Dover. Basically, it felt like speed-wise. Even though he got a bad finish at Nashville, he was running top 10 most of that race, almost the entire race, and had some fast laps. I think he's a guy that can finish top 10 here. And so it's going to be lower owned. It's definitely going to be a pivot off of Gibbs and Chastain. So I kind of like being a little bit different with Keselowski. Ricky Stenhouse. No, I do think Stenhouse is a really good option, but under the guys that we need to be a little bit different, I'm going to say Ryan Preece. Preece has been bad, right? Preece has not looked good at any moment of the season, basically speed-wise, but 4th at Nashville, 11th at New Hampshire, randomly showing up at the end of the races. That's always a possibility, and I think obviously he's not a 36 place car. I think he's more of a 26 place car, so you're kind of built in with a decent floor, but if he can't come through, that could be good. Brian thinks Brad's going to be good tomorrow, so good. I agree with that. Another one. I need another one, don't I? Shit. I don't know. I don't really like anyone. Let's go. We haven't talked about him all race. Alex Bowman, 7,800. Yes, and this is the point. That face is exactly the point. I don't think Alex Bowman's going to be optimal. I don't think he is. But he's 7,800 and the car's fast. If he finishes like 4th, he won here not that long ago. If he finishes like 4th, would you be shocked? Have you seen his results this year? He's been running top 10 every damn week. So I'm looking at a guy that I think probably finishes like 8th and doesn't reach value. But what if it's 4th? What if it's 4th with 8 fast laps? What if it's 4th with 8 fast laps and Busch misses and Keselowski misses and all these other guys miss, or Bubba Wallace crashes out, and I can pivot to this guy who gets me 44 points and the chalk bust? I'm not saying it's comfortable. I'm not saying it's fun. But Alex Bowman's been a top 10 guy all year, and if he can just kind of run in this range, it could work out. He at Charlotte, good example, started 6th, finished 9th, 7 fast laps, 35 points. 35 points isn't great, but if you turn that 9th into a 4th and add 10 more points, it's 45 points. And if I can play him over chalk, why not? And so I do think it's a sneaky play. I think it's risky. I'm not comfortable with it, but the car's fast. Fast cars go fast, right? Like that's kind of my smart ass slogan. So why not?
Yeah, it's definitely a risky play, but a top 5 for Alex Bowman here is not out of the realm of possibility. I just worry, the value is really thin there, and he's got to, really overperform that top 5 to probably score, just to outscore some of those PD plays there. But again, that's why he's definitely worth I'm a dollar lineup, right? He's definitely worth a dollar lineup or two. So I'll be playing some Alex Bowman. I like plays like that because those are plays like you said. If he does win it because he takes 2 tires at the end, you're gonna have to have him. And
yeah, like it's definitely a contrarian play, but
7% owned, maybe 8% owned. Like no,
yeah, it's gonna be low. So yeah, fast car that could finish top 5. Like it's worth a look. And his ownership it's got to be single digits. Like I can't imagine it not being. So maybe it's 11 or 12%. But man, like I think you're getting a really low guy in a fast car, so it's worth a shot.
Definitely worth a dollar. All right, let's get me a winner. Give me a winner.
Martin Truex. I just think he's too strong. I think I've liked everything I've seen. Now we have seen this with the next gen car where all of a sudden, on Saturday, it's Tyler Reddick, and he looks great, and then he runs 3rd. Or with Truex, it's like, man, Truex looks amazing, and then he runs 3rd. So I'm a little concerned, but I just feel like 10 laps into a run, you're going to be looking at Truex, and it's like, holy crap, he's 2/10 faster than everybody. And so I love the way that the Toyotas get through the tunnel turn. They are literally 2/10 better than everyone through there. I think on the long runs, their cars just handle better, and that's where my money's on. So really like Truex. I think he's the guy to beat.
It does look like it is a Toyota show tomorrow. Whenever you're listening to this, thank you all for listening and making it this far into it. This is actually a short one, a little over an hour. We do always appreciate you guys all tuning in, listening. Still continuing to show up even when I take off, 3 and 4 weeks at a time. But hope you find value in this when we do get to do this. Clark, and let them know where they can find you at for those weeks we can't do this.
Yeah, dailyfanracing.com got the full write-ups for every NASCAR race and F1 race ever. I don't miss weeks. I see some competitors are like, I'm not doing content this week. Bullshit. Every race you pay me, I will make sure I put stuff out there. We had a super short turnaround with the truck race, and I think it was like an hour and a half or something. Got it done in 45 minutes. Had a mini max takedown. Had some nice wins. Like, that's the goal. So if you're into playing DFS, I will have content. We will go out there and hopefully win some money. As long as my bad luck streak continues, it might not be as good of a time. But we're breaking that. This race we're turning a profit. But yeah, it's
you got to lose so your members can win, man.
Yeah, I lose so other people can win. Yeah, I literally will sit there and say, hey, I'm super high on this guy. Maybe you should not play him. But yeah, fun show. Thank you, Jason, for hopping back on, and I appreciate everyone that watched. That's great. Please subscribe to the channel. We hit 550 earlier today, so
wow,
nice round number. So subscribe for us if you haven't already, and we will do this. I think we're doing it next week for Indy, right? And then we have the little Olympic break, but then we'll finish the year strong.
All right, see you guys next week for the Brickyard.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Peace.